I followed my wife to the bank because something in my gut wouldn't let me stay home. I told myself I was being paranoid, until I saw her slide a thick envelope across the counter, along with my wedding ring, and then sign paperwork under another man's name. My stomach dropped so hard I couldn't breathe. In that moment, I truly believed my marriage had been a 20-year lie, and I made a quiet decision right there in that parking lot. I was going to dig up the truth, even if it destroyed everything. If you want to hear what I uncovered, and how far it went, subscribe so you don't miss the next part. Coffee was already going when I stepped into the kitchen, still wearing my station t-shirt and work pants. Nia sat at the table with her workbook open, chewing the end of a pencil like it owed her money. She didn't look up when I set a plate of toast in front of her. "You finished that page?" I asked. She slid it toward me. I checked it fast, circled one problem, and pushed it back. "This one. You rushed." Nia sighed, but she picked up her eraser. That was her way of saying she heard me. Behind us, Simone moved through the hallway. No music, no small talk, just the sound of drawers opening and closing. When she stepped into the kitchen, she already had her purse on her shoulder and her keys in hand. Same plain hoodie, hair pulled back tight. She looked ready to leave before she even said good morning. It was that day again. The one day every month she always ran errands. The one day she never asked me to come along. "Out early?" I said. "Just a few things," she answered. "Grocery store, bank." Her eyes didn't meet mine. Not fully. She poured a glass of water, drank half, then set it down like the glass was heavy. "I can go with you," I offered. "No," she said quick, then softened it. "I'll be fine. You've got Nia." I nodded like it made sense, because that's what I always did. I kept the peace. I kept things moving. That was my job, even at home. Simone kissed Nia's cheek and headed out. The door closed. Her car backed out, and the kitchen felt a little too quiet afterward. I finished packing lunch, signed a school form Nia forgot to mention, and drove her to school. She hopped out at the curb and gave me a quick wave. I waited until she got inside, then turned the car around. When I pulled into the driveway, a black SUV was already sitting there. Gerald's SUV, of course. He was leaning against the hood like he belonged to the property, smiling with that tight grin he used when he wanted something. Fresh haircut, clean sneakers, gold chain catching the morning light like he thought it mattered. "Look at you," he said. "Still saving the world?" "Morning," I replied. "What's going on, Gerald?" He didn't answer, just walked past me and let himself into my house. Family. That word got used like a key in my wife's family. Like it opened any door, any cabinet, any boundary. Gerald went straight to the kitchen, opened my cabinet, grabbed a glass, and reached for my bourbon without asking. 10 in the morning, and he poured it like it was iced tea. "You serious?" I asked. He took a sip and winced like he wasn't used to good things. "It's called living," he said. "You should try it sometime." He glanced around the kitchen and tapped the counter with his finger. "Mortgage still kicking your butt?" he asked like it was a joke. "You keeping up all right?" "We're fine," I said. Gerald chuckled. "Must be nice. Station money, benefits. You got it good." That wasn't a compliment. It was inventory. He drifted down the hallway like he was checking out a showroom. His eyes landed on my office door. He reached for the handle. "That's my office," I said. He laughed quietly. "Relax, man." Then he walked in anyway. I followed and stopped in the doorway. Inside, he moved slow, running his fingers over my desk, my filing cabinet, the framed picture that hid my small safe. The safe wasn't some gangster thing. It held paperwork, records, things a grown man protects because life can turn ugly fast. Gerald's hand hovered near it. "What you got in there?" he asked, still smiling. "Private stuff," I said. He looked back at me, eyes sharp for a second, like he was measuring how far he could push. Then he turned away like he didn't care. He walked out, slipping something white into his jacket pocket as he passed me. Just a corner, a folded sheet. My throat tightened. "What's that?" I asked. Gerald didn't stop. "Mail Simone wanted," he said, like it was nothing. "You always tense." Simone didn't... He opened the front door and cut me off with a grin. "You don't talk to me like I'm one of your rookies," he said. "I'm family." Then he stepped outside, paused on the porch and added, almost casually, Tell Simone I'll call her later about that situation. She knows. He left. The SUV rolled off like he'd done what he came to do. I stood there in the hallway, staring at the empty space he'd been in, listening to the house settle back into silence. My kitchen counter still had his bourbon glass sitting there, like a mark. I poured it down the sink, rinsed the glass, and went into my office. Everything looked normal. The safe was locked. The picture was still tilted the same way, but my chest didn't believe it. I stepped out the back door, stood in the yard, and pulled my phone from my pocket. Simone's name sat on the screen while my thumb hovered, not pressing call yet, just holding there like I needed one more second to decide what kind of man I was going to be today. My thumb hovered over Simone's name for a few seconds too long. Then I slid the phone back into my pocket and went inside. I didn't call, not because I was scared to talk to her, but because I needed my head clear before I opened my mouth. That night, she came home with grocery bags and receipts like any other Tuesday. Nia talked about school. Simone laughed at the right spots. Plates clinked in the sink. Life moved forward on the surface. I watched her hands while she loaded the dishwasher. Steady, efficient, like nothing had happened. When she went upstairs, I checked my office again. Nothing looked disturbed. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had already been taken. Not just paper, something else. Something you don't see until it's gone. I barely slept. The next morning I drove to the station and tried to tuck everything into the same place I always kept my personal problems, deep enough that I could still do my job. The bay doors were open. A couple guys were cleaning equipment. Somebody had the radio on low. Normal. But then I noticed the looks. Not obvious stares, just little pauses. A glance that stayed half a second too long. A conversation that stopped when I walked by, then restarted quieter. I walked over to my locker, set my bag down, and started changing. Even that felt strange, like I was doing it in a room that suddenly didn't belong to me. Terry, one of the older guys, been in longer than me, solid man, the kind who didn't gossip, came up and leaned against the wall like he was just killing time. "You good?" he asked. "I'm good," I said automatically. He nodded once, then lowered his voice. "You got folks at New Hope Church, right?" That hit me in the gut because I hadn't said anything about church to anyone at work in weeks. "Yeah," I said. "Why?" Terry rubbed the back of his neck. "My wife heard some mess. Don't shoot the messenger." I didn't move. "What mess?" He sighed. "Somebody was saying you're not helping your wife's family, like they're in trouble and you just sitting on your money. People were asking if you got pride issues." I stared at him. For a second, my brain didn't line up the words with reality. "My wife's family?" I repeated. Terry shrugged, uncomfortable. "That's what I heard. I don't know what's true, but you know how church folks can be. They get one piece and build a whole house out of it." I nodded slowly. "Who said it?" Terry shook his head. "Didn't come from my wife directly. Came through two other mouths. That's the problem." And that was how it worked. No one ever owned the lie. It just showed up, fully dressed, walking around like it paid rent. I forced a small smile. "Appreciate you telling me." Terry slapped my shoulder lightly and walked off, leaving me standing there with my uniform shirt half buttoned and my mind spinning. So Gerald wasn't just pushing inside my house. He was pushing outside it too. I spent the day moving through calls like I always did, checking gear, watching the younger guys, going on one medical run where a man's blood pressure was so high I could see panic in his eyes. I stayed calm for him. I knew how to do that. But during the quiet stretches, my thoughts kept sliding back to that folded piece of paper in Gerald's pocket, to his little comment about Simone knowing, to the way rumors don't start by accident. Around mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number, Charlotte area code. I stepped into the hallway and answered. "This is Malik Carter." A woman's voice came through, polite, professional, with a tone that made me stand up straighter without meaning to. "Mr. Carter, hello. My name is Dana Brooks. I'm the branch manager at Piedmont Federal in Charlotte." I frowned. "Okay. I'm calling to confirm an appointment scheduled under your household," she said, careful with her words. "Your wife, Simone Carter, is expected tomorrow morning." Silence sat between us for a beat. "Why are you calling me?" I asked. Dana didn't hesitate. "Because there are notes on the account that require verification, and I want to make sure there aren't any surprises." That word landed heavy. Surprises. I swallowed. "What account?" "I'm not able to discuss details over the phone without proper authentication," she said. but I can tell you it involves a safe deposit box and recurring transactions that have been happening for a long time. My grip tightened on the phone. How long? Dana exhaled softly. Years. I leaned against the wall. The station suddenly felt hot. So why now? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Because a name was used today, she said, still polite, still guarded, and I'm not sure the person who used it understood what it meant. I didn't answer right away. My mouth went dry. Dana continued, Mr. Carter, I'm not accusing anyone. I'm simply advising you to be present tomorrow if you can. That's the safest way. Safest. Like she was warning me without saying the word warning. Okay, I said finally. I'll be there. When I hung up, I stood there in the hallway listening to the distant sound of laughter in the bay. Somebody was telling a story. Somebody was living a normal day. I walked back out and finished my shift like I hadn't just been told my life had an appointment in another city. That night at home, Simone moved through our bedroom routine like always. Shower, lotion, folding clothes, charging her phone on the nightstand. She climbed into bed and turned her back to me, scrolling for a few minutes before setting her phone down. You tired? She asked casually. Yeah, I said. She hummed like she accepted that, then closed her eyes. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing settle into sleep. The woman beside me looked the same, sounded the same, but the house didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like I was sharing it with someone who had been living a second life right behind my shoulder, and I'd been too busy keeping everything calm to notice the door had been open the whole time. Simone was still asleep when I got out of bed. I moved through the house quietly, not because I was sneaking, but because I didn't want to start a war before sunrise. The coffee maker clicked on. I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls, nothing that explained why a bank manager in Charlotte thought my presence was safest. Nia came downstairs in socks, hair sticking up on one side. You up early, she mumbled. Couldn't sleep, I said. You got school stuff packed? She nodded, grabbed a granola bar and headed toward the bathroom. I watched her go, then turned toward the kitchen trash can like my body already knew what it was looking for. It felt crazy. Grown man digging through his own garbage like a detective in a cheap TV show. But something in me refused to sit still anymore. I pulled the bag out, opened it, and started moving aside coffee grounds, paper towels, a receipt from Publix. Then I saw it, small, crumpled, shoved down like somebody wanted it to disappear. A bank slip. I smoothed it out on the counter with my palm. Piedmont Federal, Charlotte, North Carolina. It was for a safe deposit box maintenance fee. The account number was partly masked, but the name line stopped me cold. Not Simone Carter, not Gerald Wallace. It was a signature, not a full name, just initials, MC. The same way I signed forms at work when I was rushing. The same slant, the same curve on the C. My throat went tight. I stared at it until the letters blurred, then blinked hard and looked again. Maybe I was seeing what I wanted to see. Maybe it wasn't my handwriting. Maybe it was close enough to fool me. But deep down, I knew my own hand. I carried the slip into my office and pulled out old paperwork from the safe. Insurance forms, school records, mortgage documents. I laid them side by side like a man trying to convince himself he wasn't losing his mind. The initials matched. Not perfectly, but too close to ignore. I sat down at my desk, elbows on the wood, and tried to reach back into my memory like it was a file cabinet. Had I ever signed something for Simone? A loan? A box? Anything in Charlotte? We'd visited once, years ago, for her cousin's wedding. I remembered the hotel, the long drive, the way Simone had laughed with her head back when the DJ played old songs. No bank, no paperwork. I tried to remember every time I'd been exhausted. Every time I'd trusted someone without reading. Every time I'd signed a form just to get it done. Nothing came. And that blank space was what scared me most. It felt like someone had been writing lines into my life while I was busy working, paying bills, raising my kid. Like I'd been present for everything that mattered, but still somehow missing from my own story. Nia yelled from upstairs that she couldn't find her hoodie. I shoved the papers back into the safe and locked it with hands that stayed steady even though my mind wasn't. Top of the dryer, I called back. A few minutes later, Simone came downstairs dressed for the day. Same hoodie, same purse, same quiet. She moved around the kitchen without looking at the counter where the bank slip had been. Either she didn't see it, or she did and chose not to react. "Morning," she said. "Morning," I answered. She poured coffee like her hands had never shook in their life. I wanted to hold the slip up and say, "Explain this." Instead, I watched her, waiting for something, guilt, fear, any crack in the routine. Nothing. Then the doorbell rang. Simone froze for half a second. Then she kept moving. I opened the door and saw Gerald standing there with a box of donuts like he was some kind of hero. "Hey, brother," he said, smiling wide. "Thought I'd bring breakfast." He held the box out with both hands, like peace offering was his new hobby. I didn't touch it. "What do you want?" I asked. Gerald's smile didn't fade. He stepped inside anyway, passing me like I was furniture. "Damn, Malik," he said. "You always come at people like they owe you something." He set the donuts on the counter and looked around. "How's work?" he asked, too friendly now. "You still running calls? Still playing Superman?" I stayed quiet. Gerald turned his attention to Simone. "You ready for your little trip?" he asked. Simone didn't answer right away. She just tightened the lid on her travel mug and said, "I'm leaving soon." Gerald nodded, satisfied, then looked back at me. "You ever think about upgrading?" he asked, leaning against the counter. "Bigger place, better neighborhood? I mean, you got a daughter. She deserves nice things." His tone was smooth, but his eyes were measuring, like he was checking how much room he still had to push. "We're fine," I said again. He chuckled. "Man, you always say that." Then he lowered his voice just enough that only I could hear. "Just remember, everything in that house don't just belong to you." He smiled again, loud, friendly, and picked up a donut like we were sharing jokes. Nia came downstairs at that moment, backpack on, and Gerald switched his whole face. "There's my favorite niece," he said, waving like he was her second father. Nia barely looked at him. She grabbed her lunch and walked past. "Bye," she said to her mom, not to him. Simone kissed her forehead, and I drove Nia to school like nothing was wrong. On the way back, my phone buzzed, Simone texting me. "Running errands. Be back later." No mention of Charlotte, no mention of Gerald, no mention of anything. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a long moment with the engine running, staring at my own front door like it belonged to someone else. That evening, I made one call to Nia's best friend's mom and asked if she could sleep over. "Of course," she said. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just need a quiet night." After I dropped Nia off, I came home, got into my car, and slid my phone into the glove compartment. Then I went into settings and shut off location sharing. Next, I reached under the dash and tucked a small recorder into the side pocket of the driver's seat. Nothing fancy, just enough to catch voices. I sat behind the wheel, hands resting on the steering wheel, and waited for Simone to leave. When she stepped outside with her purse and keys, I didn't call out. I just started the engine and eased out after her, keeping 2 car lengths back, quiet as a man who didn't trust his own life anymore, but still knew how to move with discipline. I stayed far enough behind Simone that I could pretend it was just traffic. 2 lanes, a few cars between us. Nothing that looked like chasing. My hands rested loose on the wheel, but my shoulders wouldn't drop. She drove straight out toward I-85 like she'd done it 100 times. No hesitation, no wrong turns. That told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a spontaneous errand run. This was a route. By the time we crossed into North Carolina, I'd stopped thinking in sentences. My brain kept switching to short notes. Watch. Don't react. Keep distance. Simone pulled into a shopping center in Charlotte that had a bank on one end and a couple restaurants on the other. She parked near the front, grabbed her purse, and walked in like she wasn't carrying a second life on her shoulder. I didn't get out right away. I sat 1 row over, low enough that the dash blocked most of my face. I watched the entrance. A few minutes passed. Then a black SUV rolled into the lot. My stomach tightened before I even saw the driver. Gerald parked across the way, not even near the main door. He moved like he knew exactly where he was headed. No looking around, no checking his phone. He walked straight to a side entrance, one of those doors employees use, and slipped inside without stopping. I leaned forward, trying to keep my breathing even. So, he wasn't just connected to whatever Simone was doing. He was part of it. I waited, eyes locked on the building, until Simone came back into view through the glass. She stood at the counter with a woman in a navy blazer, Dana. I recognized her from the way she carried herself, all professional control. Simone pulled out a thick envelope and set it on the counter. Dana didn't touch it right away. She looked at Simone's face, then down at the paperwork in front of her. Simone picked up a pen. From where I sat, I couldn't see the words on the page, but I saw the motion of her hand. It wasn't just her signing, it was the shape of it, the slant, the way the first letter started with a hard stroke. It looked like mine. My throat went dry. I pressed my tongue against the back of my teeth to keep myself from doing something stupid like storming in there. Simone slid the papers back to Dana, took the envelope, and tucked it into her purse like it was nothing. She walked out calm, got into her car, and drove away. I stayed parked for a full minute after she left. Then I pulled out, took a different exit, and headed back to Atlanta. No music, no calls, just highway and the sound of my own thoughts running into each other. When I finally I logged into my banking app. The loan wasn't finalized yet, but it was there. My name, my information, an amount big enough to ruin a man who paid his bills on time. Then my phone rang again. It was my mother-in-law. I answered because ignoring her would only make things louder. "Malik," she said, voice shaking. "I don't know what to do anymore." I stayed quiet. She sniffled. "Gerald is struggling, baby. He's behind. He's got pressure. And he says you're turning your back on family." There it was. The rumor had a source. My mouth felt tight. How did my name get tied to his pressure? She cried harder, like tears could erase paperwork. "He's your brother. You're supposed to help. Simone told me you were upset, and I don't understand why." I didn't raise my voice, didn't argue, didn't correct her, because in that moment, I finally understood what they'd been doing. They weren't asking for help. They were claiming ownership. They'd taken my patience, my silence, my good reputation, and now they were treating my name like a line of credit. I hung up, walked into my office, opened my laptop, and started pulling my credit report like a man checking his own pulse, already knowing something inside him had been tampered with. The credit report took a few minutes to load, and those minutes felt longer than the drive to Charlotte. I didn't tell Simone what I saw, not yet. I printed the pages, folded them, and slid them into my jacket like I was carrying something fragile. Then I called the number Dana had left on my voicemail. She answered on the second ring. "Mr. Carter," she said, "I was hoping you'd call." "I need to talk in person," I told her. Dana didn't argue. "I'm on my way back to Charlotte tonight, but I can meet you halfway." "Where?" "A diner off I-85 in South Carolina," she said. "Early, before your shift." I agreed before my mind could find reasons to hesitate. The next morning, I drove down before sunrise, stopped once for gas, and pulled into a small roadside diner where the coffee never tasted good but always stayed hot. Dana was already there in a booth by the window, hair pulled back, blazer gone, looking more tired than she'd sounded on the phone. She didn't waste time with small talk. "I can't give you everything," she said, keeping her voice low, "but I can show you enough to protect yourself." She slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies, not originals, but clean enough to read. A safe deposit box agreement, several authorization forms, recurring transaction logs, and on the signature line, my name. Not typed, signed, the same slant, the same sharp entry stroke, the same quick finish. I sat back and stared at it until the words stopped making sense. "I've never been to that branch," I said. "I know," Dana replied. "That's why I called." She tapped one page with her fingertip. This was signed in person, not online, not mailed. And the ID used was complicated. Complicated how? Dana hesitated. "A driver's license number tied to you, but the photo didn't match. That should have been flagged years ago. It wasn't. Someone kept pushing it through." My jaw tightened. "Who?" I asked. Dana held my gaze. "I can't say names without stepping into something I'm not protected from. But I will say this. Your wife is the one who shows up. She's the one who keeps paying. And she looks like someone who's been carrying a weight too long." I didn't thank Dana. I just nodded and closed the folder. She leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Carter, you're not the only man this happens to. Family uses a name because it's easier than building their own. But your situation? It reads like coercion. I drove home with that word sitting in my throat the whole way. Coercion. Not cheating. Not secrets for fun. Pressure. Threat. Simone was in the kitchen when I walked in, wiping down the counter like she could scrub away whatever was coming. She looked up and forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're home early," she said. I set the folder down on the table. Didn't slam it, didn't throw it, just placed it there like evidence. Her face tightened. I didn't raise my voice. I asked one question. "Who are you paying off with my name?" Simone froze. Her hands stayed on the rag. Her shoulders lifted like she'd been bracing for a hit. For a moment, she looked at me the way you look at someone right before you confess something you've been hiding from yourself too. Then her eyes filled. "No," she whispered. "Please, Malik, don't." I waited. No shouting, no pacing, just silence long enough to make truth uncomfortable. Simone sank into the chair, palms pressed to her forehead. "It wasn't supposed to get this far," she said, voice breaking. "I thought I could keep it contained." "Contained?" I repeated. She shook her head hard. "It started after your mom's funeral." That hit me like a shove. My mother had been gone 20 years, but her name still had weight in my house. You were wrecked," Simone said. "You couldn't sleep, you couldn't eat. You were signing papers just to make people leave you alone." I stayed still because I remembered that version of me, the one walking through days like he was underwater. "One day Gerald came over," she continued, crying quietly now. "He had some form. He said it was for the family business. Just something to help him get a loan. He said he needed your signature." My mouth went dry. "I told him no," Simone said fast. "I swear I did, but he kept pushing. And you were asleep upstairs and I thought..." She swallowed hard, shame pooling in her voice. "I signed it," she whispered. "I signed your name." My stomach clenched, but my face stayed calm. Stoic wasn't a choice anymore. It was the only way I could keep standing. Simone kept going, words spilling out like she'd been holding her breath for 2 decades. "He kept it," she said. "He told me if I didn't do what he said, he'd show you. He'd show everyone. He said you'd leave. He said you'd take Nia and I'd lose my family and my marriage in one day." She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, not even caring how she looked. "So every month, I paid him," she said. "I sent money. I went to the bank. I tried to keep it from touching you." I stared at her. "And now it is touching me," I said quietly. Before she could answer, my phone buzzed on the table. A group text lit up the screen, family chat. Gerald had sent it. A long message about loyalty, about how I'd changed, how Simone was hurting, how a real man would step up instead of acting better than everybody. Within seconds, replies started flooding in. Cousins, aunts, people I barely spoke to, some angry, some disappointed, some praying for us. Simone stared at the screen like she'd seen it coming. I looked at it and felt something in me settle. This wasn't just a private mess anymore. It was a system, and I was standing at the edge of it, deciding whether I was going to keep living inside their version of my life or take mine back, even if it meant the whole family called me the villain for it. The group chat kept buzzing, but I didn't answer a single message. Simone sat at the table with her hands folded, eyes swollen, waiting for me to say something that would either save her or end her. I didn't give her either. I told her to pick up Nia after school and keep things normal for our daughter. That was all. Before I left the house, I opened my office safe and pulled out every document that had my signature on it. I slid them into a manila envelope, then locked everything back up like my home had become a crime scene. At the station, I traded shifts, told my captain I had a family situation and needed 2 days. He looked at me for a long second, then nodded. No questions. Men like him understand that sometimes you don't ask because you already know it's bad. I drove straight to Washington, D.C. and rented a small studio apartment through a short-term site. It wasn't fancy, just a clean bed, a desk, and quiet. A place where nobody could knock and call it family like that was a free pass. I met Rafael Torres the next morning in an office building near DuPont Circle. He wasn't the kind of lawyer who tried to make you feel better. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, calm voice, suit that didn't need to impress anyone. He scanned the copies Dana had given me, then leaned back in his chair. "You want peace," he said. Or you want your name back. I didn't answer right away. Raphael didn't fill the silence. He let it sit there until I spoke, because he knew men like me talk when we've made a decision. I want the truth on paper, I said, and I want it to stop. He nodded once. Then we build a file. So that's what I did, like it was my second job. I requested full statements from every bank tied to my name. I pulled old tax records. I contacted Dana again and asked what she could legally release. She didn't promise miracles, but she offered what she could. Transaction logs, appointment timestamps, notes from tellers. Paper trails. Raphael filed requests for surveillance footage from the Charlotte branch and flagged the loan application that hadn't finalized yet. He had an investigator friend look into Gerald's business filings, because guys like Gerald always have more than one mess running at a time. Back in Atlanta, I kept my recorder in the car. I didn't tell Simone, not because I wanted to trap her, but because I couldn't afford to let fear make her warn Gerald. I needed her to keep doing what she'd been doing. That routine was the only thing keeping him predictable. On the third day, Simone called me from the grocery store parking lot. "He's here," she whispered. "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. "Gerald. He's watching me. He's asking why I'm quiet." "Don't argue," I said. "Go home like normal." I left DC that afternoon and drove through the night, stopping only to stretch. When I got home, I parked down the street and watched my own driveway like I was scouting an unfamiliar house. A car I didn't recognize sat across the road. Dark sedan, engine off, someone inside. I waited. The sedan didn't move. I took a photo of the plate, walked into my house through the garage, and didn't mention it to Simone. She looked like she wanted to speak, but she didn't. Maybe she finally understood that words weren't going to fix this. An hour later, my phone pinged with an email alert from my credit monitoring service. New login detected. Location, Charlotte, North Carolina. My jaw tightened. I changed my password, added a security key, and locked the account down. Then another message came through. Unknown number, no name, just plain text. Stop before your daughter gets pulled into it. I stared at the screen for a long time. No punctuation, no threats spelled out. Just a sentence designed to make my hands shake. Instead, something in me went quiet. I turned my phone face down on the counter, walked into Nia's room, and checked on her while she slept. One arm was hanging off the bed. Her hair was spread across the pillow like she'd thrown herself into sleep without thinking. I pulled the blanket up over her shoulder and stood there a second longer than I needed to, listening to her breathing. Then I went back to my office, opened my laptop, and started organizing everything into folders. Dates, amounts, locations. Because if a wave was coming, I didn't need emotion. I needed proof. I was still sorting documents when the school called. The front office number flashed on my screen. I answered on the first ring, because when your kid's school calls during the day, you don't let it go to voicemail. "Mr. Carter?" a woman said. "This is Ms. Holloway at Nia's school. Do you have a moment?" "Yes," I said. "Is Nia okay?" "She's fine," Ms. Holloway replied quickly. "But we had an odd situation today." My stomach dropped anyway. "A man called asking for Nia's personal information," she said. "He claimed he was her uncle." I sat up straighter. "What information?" "Address confirmation, emergency contacts, and whether she'd be available for pickup this week," she explained. "We didn't give him anything. He was persistent." I kept my voice level. "Did he give you—" "We can provide a note for your records," Ms. Holloway said, "and we can add a security flag to her file." "Do it," I told her. "No one picks her up except me or my wife. No exceptions." "Understood," she said, gentler now. "I'm sorry you're dealing with this." For a minute, I just sat there, breathing slow, letting the reality settle in. 20 years of payments, 20 years of silence, 20 years of Gerald treating my life like a tool. And now, he was reaching toward Nia. If I kept swallowing this, it wouldn't end with a damaged credit score. It would end with my daughter learning that her father could be used and still smile. I couldn't let that be her lesson. That evening, I called Nia's best friend's mom again. "Can she stay over tonight?" I asked. "No problem," she said. "Everything all right?" "Yeah," I said, and hated how easy the lie came out. "Just want her with someone she trusts." After I dropped her off, I came back home and locked every door. Simone stood in the hallway, watching me like she was afraid to speak. I didn't argue with her. I didn't comfort her either. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and started building a clean folder. School report, credit alerts, bank slips, recordings, printed emails, stacking it all like I was preparing for court, not for a family discussion. Dana called after midnight. I was still at my desk, eyes burning from looking at screens too long, when her name lit up. I stepped into the hallway so Simone wouldn't hear. "Mr. Carter," Dana said, voice low. "I have someone who wants to speak to you. He used to work at our Charlotte branch." "When?" I asked. "Tomorrow," she replied. "Early. He's nervous, but he's willing." I didn't ask why. People don't volunteer help in situations like this unless they've been burned, too. I drove to Charlotte before sunrise and met Dana in the same diner parking lot we'd used before. This time, she wasn't alone. A man sat in the booth with his back to the wall. Mid-30s, tired eyes, hands wrapped around a coffee cup like he needed it to stay upright. Dana introduced him as Marcus. He didn't smile, didn't waste time. "I'm not here because I like drama," Marcus said. "I'm here because I'm tired of watching that man do this to people." I nodded once. "Tell me what you know." Marcus pulled out his phone and slid it across the table. He had screenshots, security stills from the bank's internal system. They weren't crystal clear, but clear enough. Gerald, walking in through the side door. Gerald at the counter. Gerald leaning close to a teller, mouth low, body blocking the camera angle. And in 3 of the shots, a woman stood a few steps behind him. Simone. She always came with an envelope, Marcus said. She never acted like she was the one in control. She looked like somebody trying to get through a chore without getting punished. My stomach tightened, but I stayed quiet. Marcus flipped to another image, my signature on a form. "That signature," he said, tapping the screen, showed up over and over. Different dates, same branch, same pattern. He'd push, staff would cave. He used to say he knew people. He'd threaten complaints. He'd get loud. Marcus looked straight at me. "Your wife was the runner," he said. "But she wasn't the one benefiting. He was." I breathed in slow, exhaled slower. Dana watched me, face serious. This is what I meant when I said coercion. I asked Marcus for copies. Dana promised she'd preserve what she could. Then I drove back to Atlanta with my mind clear in a way it hadn't been for weeks. The weak point wasn't the money. It was the repetition, the pattern, the years. That night, Gerald called me. I let it ring twice, then picked up. "Malik," he said, voice warm like nothing was wrong. "We need to talk like men." "No," I said simply. He paused. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, I'm not doing this on your terms." His tone sharpened. "You want to make this public? You sure? Because I can tell everybody what you signed. I can make you look real stupid." I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just listened long enough for him to hang himself with his own confidence. Then I said, "Good night, Gerald," and ended the call. I forwarded the recording to Raphael. I sent the screenshots, too. An hour later, I was back in the studio apartment in DC, sitting at the desk with my laptop open, stacking dates and documents like puzzle pieces, linking one signature to the next, one threat to the next, quietly building the kind of case that didn't need anyone's approval to be true. Raphael told me not to meet Gerald anywhere private. "No house," he said. "No church parking lot. No family kitchen table. You bring him here, where words turn into records." So I texted Gerald like I was giving him an opportunity. "Raphael needs one signature to get you some relief," I wrote. "Come to DC and we'll handle it." He replied 5 minutes later. "Knew you'd do the right thing." That confidence told me he still thought I was the same man I'd been for 20 years. Gerald showed up in a gray suit that didn't fit him right, carrying himself like a businessman. He walked into Raphael's office smiling, arms open like he was the one bringing peace. "Malik," he said. "There he is." I stayed seated. Raphael stood, shook his hand once, then gestured toward the chair across from me. Gerald sat down and immediately started talking before anyone asked him to. "Look, man," he said, leaning forward, palms out. "I never wanted this to get messy. Simone got emotional. She misunderstood what I needed." Simone's name in his mouth made my jaw tighten, but I didn't speak. Gerald kept going, voice smooth. "She was bringing money because she wanted to," he said. She wanted to help. But you? You got control issues. You always had. You act like she can't breathe without your permission. He glanced at Raphael, as if he was recruiting him. And now Malik wants to call cops because his ego got bruised, Gerald added, shaking his head. That's not a man. That's pride. I let him talk. Every sentence was a shovel. When he finally paused, I slid the file across the table. No speech, no accusation, just paper. Gerald's eyes dropped to the first page, bank stills of him entering through the side door. Then the transaction logs. Then the signatures stacked over years. Then the forensic comparison showing the pattern of forgery. Then the credit report with attempted accounts. At the bottom was the transcript from my recording. His voice, clear as day. Use that SSN if you have to. Don't be stupid. He stared at it too long, like his brain refused to accept what his eyes already knew. Then his face snapped up. You set me up, he barked, loud now. You tricked me. Raphael didn't flinch. I preserved evidence, he said. That's all. Gerald shoved the folder back like it burned his hands. This is family, he shouted. You can't do this. You're going to ruin everything. The door behind him opened. A man stepped in with a badge clipped to his belt, calm and unhurried. He wasn't dressed like a movie agent. He looked like someone who'd done this 1,000 times and didn't need to raise his voice. Mr. Wallace? The man asked. I'm Special Agent Harris. We need to speak with you. Gerald's mouth opened, then shut. He looked around the room like he expected someone to save him. No one moved. I finally stood, not to argue, not to gloat, just to leave. Gerald's eyes followed me, wide and furious, but there was fear under it now. Real fear. The kind he'd been using on other people for years. I walked out into the DC cold, pulled my coat tighter, and started toward my car. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Simone. I didn't open it right away. I kept walking, letting the air hit my face, letting my steps feel like they belonged to me again. I opened Simone's message in the parking lot. It was 3 lines. No excuses, no blaming, just fear. Please come home. They're calling me. I don't know what to say. I stared at the screen, then turned the phone over and left it on the passenger seat. 2 days later, I picked Nia up from school and told her we were taking a short trip. I didn't dress it up, didn't sell it like vacation, just said we needed to get away for a few days. Are we in trouble? She asked, half joking, half serious. No, I told her. We're just going to breathe. We drove to the Outer Banks in silence that wasn't uncomfortable. She listened to music. I kept my eyes on the road and let my shoulders loosen for the first time in weeks. At the rental, Nia went straight to the couch and kicked off her shoes like she owned the place. She asked for pizza. I ordered it. We ate. We watched a stupid reality show and laughed at the same parts. That night, I checked my email. Raphael had sent an update. Gerald was being charged. Fraud, forgery, extortion, attempted identity theft, and because of the school call, the case included an attempt to access a minor's information under false pretenses. No more family arguments, no more misunderstandings. Paperwork didn't care how loud Gerald got. The next message was from my mother-in-law, then an aunt, then a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. Some angry, some begging, some suddenly quiet. None of it moved me. On the 3rd day, Simone called. I let it ring until it stopped. Then she texted, "Can we talk? Just once. Please." I didn't answer. Instead, I wrote something on a sheet of paper at the kitchen table while Nia was brushing her teeth. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't a list of feelings. It was a boundary. I won't press charges against you. You were trapped. But I won't be your husband anymore. You kept a secret that destroyed me, and you let him use my name. I'm done living under anyone else's fear. I folded it, put it in an envelope, and mailed it from a small post office the next morning. Back in Atlanta, I moved my clothes out while Simone was at work. I didn't take furniture. I didn't take pictures. Just what belonged to me and what I needed to father my daughter. Raphael handled the rest, protective measures, credit locks, legal paperwork, the kind of cleanup nobody thanks you for. On our last night at the beach, Nia fell asleep in the back seat as we sat in the parking lot, waiting for the rain to pass. Her head leaned against the window, breath steady. I sat there with both hands resting on the steering wheel, not gripping this time, just holding it. Nothing buzzed, no one called, No one demanded I explain myself. For years, I thought silence meant I was being strong. Now I understood something different. Quiet wasn't surrender. Quiet was what freedom sounded like.